yeah, just chuck a massive gallon of diesel over the whole bike and you should be alright. I'm only joking. Guys, welcome to the video. Today I'm going to show you how and where to lubricate your bike. Okay, so my Rally Firefly here, I've just cleaned that, and that comes on to the first major point. Before you clean your lube your bike, you want to make sure it's all clean. If you're lubing a dirty bike, you will actually make it worse because all the dirt and lube will mix together and grind its way into any moving parts. Right, so the next question we face is, what lube do we use? 3-in-1 oil would be, if you're using a road bike or a bike that you just don't really take off-road, I'd highly recommend this 3-in-1 multi-purpose oil. Lubricates, cleans, prevents rust. This stuff is, well, 3-in-1, all-rounder really. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for the chain. What we have here for the chain is all-weather lube. For all-weather riding conditions, that is for the chain mainly, but I'm going to actually use that on other parts because I do sometimes take this bike off-road. The reason why I'm saying about going off-road is this stuff has Teflon in it, which makes it a little bit thinner and just makes everything operate smoothly, so it's not just pure oil. Whereas this stuff is very thick, well, quite thick, so dirt will stick to it. Obviously, if you're using your mountain bike, which you take off-road all the time, in the winter I'd highly recommend wet lube, and in the summer, if you're really riding in dust, use dry lube. But if you're not sure, just go for the all-weather. Okay guys, sorry about the quality, if you can hear, it's very windy here. Anyway, moving on to where to lubricate the bike. So, a close-up of the parts you need to oil or lubricate. You see these joints here in the front derailleur, where those gaps are. Basically can't go wrong with the front derailleur. There's nothing on the derailleur you should avoid oiling, as long as you wipe off the excess. So yeah, those cracks, the spring and the cable, then just wipe off the excess. Same with the rear derailleur, these joints where the pins hold things together, or the axles I suppose of the derailleur. Yeah, drop some oil down there and on the springs of the rear derailleur. What I'd avoid personally is putting oil down there, simply because that would dilute the grease in the bearings, which is never really a great thing. If you just put a drop down there, it won't hurt too much, but I'd recommend just leaving it if it's greased, which it should be. Basically, to put it simply, lubricate any moving part within reason. Obviously, don't forget to not get lubrication anywhere near the brakes and the rims and all that, because then you'll never stop. What I mean by the moving parts is obviously your derailleur. The most important part is obviously the chain. Make sure that's clean with, you can use white spirit to clean off any grime and that, on Teflon lube for everything, because this bike I sometimes take off-road and sometimes I keep it on the road and use my proper mountain bike. You can never put too much oil on, because after, what I like to do is get a rag and just wipe off any excess, which is always a good idea, after leaving it for a good minute to let it soak into whatever part you're oiling. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? What you gonna do? What you gonna do? This is just for us now. This is just for us now. On this front derailleur, there's a cable. If you just lubricate the top use gravity to your advantage and it'll run down, and then you can wipe the excess off. You may recognise this cheap and cheerful invention from one of my other videos, which is a bit older, which I'm just going to use to clean the chain a bit, and then I can lube it. As you can probably see, that's a bit cleaner. White spirit, 2 toothbrushes taped together, and a rag. That's cleaned it up nicely. Now we're ready to lube it. Obviously I'm going to use the chain lube. Trying not to spill it. And what might be useful, guys, is covering where you see oil drip, because it often gets onto the rim. I've made that mistake quite a few times. So yeah, I personally don't like spray on chain lube just because it goes everywhere. When it just starts to shine, that is your chain all lubed up and ready to go until you clean it next. So moving parts, cables, things like that. Just to recap, also what wouldn't hurt is dropping a bit of oil down the brake cable. Unless you've got hydraulic brakes, you won't need to do as much maintenance. Okay, so my Rally Firefly, as you can see, has no suspension. If you have a bike with suspension, front or full, so hardtail or full suspension, there's a lot more parts to oil. Just using the knowledge that I've given you, you can probably figure out things like that, where the suspension is, the rubber bushings, the bearings, just any bits where the suspension flexes and moves in the grooves there, you'd need to lube up. Obviously if you're actually taking the bike apart or doing something like the shocks, you want to be using special grease for that, but I won't go into that because that's just going a bit off track really. Because oil is used to prevent rust, you can actually use this 3-in-1. Just get that on a rag and just wipe it over the cables just to stop them rusting, not because they move, just because they're exposed metal. Yeah, that'll pretty much wrap the video up. If you found this useful / enjoyed, don't forget to consider subscribing and giving me a thumbs up. I always really appreciate that. I'll see you guys in the next video. Good old Swarfiga should get this oily stuff off my hands.